OpenAI just merged Codex into ChatGPT and turned it into the super app for all kinds of knowledge work. But that's not all. They also launched GPT 5.6, a whole new family of frontier models, including its most powerful model yet, GPT 5.6 Sol. It has performance that puts it in the same conversation as Claude Fable 5. But there's a big problem. There's so much good stuff packed into this release that it's easy to miss the updates that actually matter. So in this video, we're going to focus on the essential updates about GPT 5.6 and the new ChatGPT app that you need to know if you want to build software with Codex or do knowledge work with ChatGPT. We're going to cover three big things. First, we'll talk about the new ChatGPT app, which brings chat, ChatGPT Work, and Codex all together in one place. Second, we'll look at the new GPT 5.6 model family, Sol, Terra, and Luna, and when to use each one. And thirdly, I'll show you what's new in Codex with features like ChatGPT Sites, Subagents, and improvements to computer use with Appshots. But first, if you're new to the channel, I'm Avthar, and I teach people about the best AI coding tools like Codex and Claude Code and how to build with them. So if you're trying to level up with AI, please subscribe to the channel and turn on notifications for more videos like this. With that out the way, let's get into the big changes that OpenAI announced. The biggest product change is that Codex has now been merged into the ChatGPT desktop app. There used to be two separate apps, Codex and ChatGPT, but now it's just one. Now, when you open the new ChatGPT app, you have two modes to choose from, Work and Codex. Work is a new agent mode for knowledge work and non-coding tasks, and Codex remains the dedicated experience for building software. And in both modes, you can access chat, which gives you the classic ChatGPT experience that you already know and love. You can think of the new ChatGPT app as the everything app for working with AI. You have chat for answers and conversations, Work for professional deliverables, and Codex for code all in one place. Now, does this mean that Codex, OpenAI's beloved coding agent, is going away? According to OpenAI, the answer is no. And I'd argue OpenAI is actually embracing Codex even more. Codex is now more deeply embedded inside ChatGPT, and its agentic capabilities are extending beyond code, which brings us to ChatGPT Work. The simplest way to understand ChatGPT Work is that it's Codex, OpenAI's best-in-class coding agent for non-coding tasks. It's an agent inside ChatGPT that's built for multi-step, outcome-oriented work. ChatGPT Work starts by gathering context from your files, connected apps, browser sessions, and apps on your computer. Then it can break down a goal into steps, use tools, and work without interruption. Finally, it produces a finished artifact, such as a research report, a document, a spreadsheet, a presentation, a workflow result, or even a site. More on that in part 3 of the video. So how does ChatGPT Work compare to Codex and Chat? And how do you decide which one to use? The simplest way to choose is to ask yourself, what are you trying to finish? Codex is for making and verifying changes to software artifacts. I'm talking about code bases, applications, pull requests, and anything else in the software development lifecycle. Use Codex when the repository is a source of truth. On the other hand, ChatGPT Work is for producing a finished professional deliverable, like a report, presentation, document, or spreadsheet. Use ChatGPT Work when you want something created for you. Finally, use Chat for the classic ChatGPT experience, for getting questions answered, exploring ideas, or just learning something new. Here's how I use all the new modes in my job as a product manager. I use Codex mode when I'm creating an issue, prototyping a new feature, or creating a changelog. I use a new ChatGPT Work mode if I'm doing something like turning meeting notes and spreadsheets into a new memo or presentation. And I use Chat for side chats and for one-off questions. The nice part is that I can now move between all three of these all in one place. An important thing to note is that behind the scenes, Work and Codex actually use the same models, and they also share many of the same Codex agent capabilities. The main difference that I found is in the experience that each mode puts in front of you. For example, in Codex, you'll see more buttons and badges around things in the software development process, like your repo and pull requests, while in Work, you're nudged to use plugins to give the agent access to documents in your connected apps. Both modes can use plugins, computer use, and browser context, whether from the built-in browser or through the Chrome extension. Before you try out the new ChatGPT app, here's a few practical things for you to know. First, Work and Codex share the same usage and credit pool, so using one affects how much usage you have available for the other. Second, because Chat, Work, and Codex now live in the same app, you can actually carry context between them without starting over. For example, you can add a chat to a Codex or Work session as context or to take the next step. Third, I want to share a secret to getting the most out of the new ChatGPT app, and that's connected context. That means giving it access to local files, but also using plugins to connect the tools you use for work, whether it's Google Drive, Slack, or other apps where your company's knowledge already lives. Now, both ChatGPT Work and Codex are powered by OpenAI's latest frontier models, which brings us to section 2, the GPT 5.6 model family. But first, if you're watching this and thinking, I don't just want to hear about these tools, I want to become genuinely good at building with them. That's exactly what I teach in Become an AI Native Builder. It's my live hands-on course where you'll learn how to use Codex and Claude Code to plan, build, and confidently ship real projects. You can learn more and join the next cohort using the link in the video description. All right, let's look at the GPT 5.6 model family. The first thing you need to know is that GPT 5.6 isn't one model. It's a family of 3 models: Sol, Terra, and Luna. Sol is a flagship model for your most complex, important, and long horizon work where quality really matters. Terra is a balanced everyday model, giving you strong reasoning and tool use with better cost and speed. And Luna is the fastest and lowest cost model for clear, repeatable, high volume tasks, things like extraction, classification, and transformations. Now, choosing the model is only the first step. In ChatGPT Work and Codex, you can also tune the effort level and speed. Here's how to think about choosing the right settings for you. The model is about selecting your intelligence tier. Use Sol for the hardest work, Terra for everyday work, and Luna for high volume tasks. Effort controls the reasoning budget. I recommend starting at medium and raising it only when you think the task would benefit from it. On the other hand, speed doesn't affect output quality, but it does control how quickly you get the response. There's 2 options, normal and fast mode. Fast mode runs at around 1.5 times the speed, which is great for iteration and staying in the flow, but it also uses your token budget much more aggressively. The key insight here is that models can behave differently depending on the effort level. This is reflected in the benchmarks in the GPT 5.6 launch posts. They compared GPT 5.6 Sol at medium, high, extra high, and max effort and show how they achieve different results even for the same model. Speaking of effort, that brings us to Ultra Mode, a new mode for your hardest tasks. Ultra Mode does 2 things. It gives Sol the largest possible reasoning budget and automatically splits work across sub-agents in parallel. You should 100% try Ultra Mode. Use it when you feel your task is genuinely complex and can benefit from parallel agents or just throwing a lot of tokens at it. Next, let's talk about which model and settings you should use. If you just want an easy default recommendation, I got you. Use GPT 5.6 Sol with medium effort. Switch to 5.6 Sol extra high for genuinely harder tasks. This is what Thibaut from the Codex team at OpenAI recommends. Otherwise, I recommend trying each model on a variety of tasks to see what you find best. For example, if cost and latency matter, Terra is probably a good fit. And of course, try different effort levels for each model tier. One way to do this would be to start with the lowest setting you think is acceptable, and then increase effort if you're not happy with the results. That way, you don't overspend tokens unnecessarily. Next up, let's talk about how you can get the most out of GPT 5.6. The biggest piece of advice is to think about GPT 5.6 as a model designed to achieve goals. So focus less on micromanaging every step and more on defining the outcome you want and the boundaries for ChatGPT Work or Codex to stay within. Give it a goal, point it towards your files, apps, or browser, and let it go to work. OpenAI also put out a prompting guide for GPT 5.6. Here are the 5 parts I'd include in a strong GPT 5.6 Sol prompt. I'll illustrate them using this example template I made, which you're welcome to steal and modify. Number 1 is the goal. This is the output, the artifact, or the change that must exist at the end. Number 2 is the sources of truth. These are the files, documents, or data that the agent should use to complete the goal. Number 3 is constraints. What should the agent not touch, change, or do? Number 4 is defining a completion bar. In other words, when does the model know when it's done? This could be test passing, checking the completed doc against source materials, or some other verification task for the agent to run. And number 5 is permissions and stopping rules. What actions can the agent perform and what does it need to ask you for? You can also define when the agent should stop or ask for confirmation here. Next, let's put Sol in context. How does it compare with other frontier models, and what is it especially good at? As we mentioned earlier, Sol is a frontier model in the same class as Claude Fable 5. The headline is that Sol gives you more intelligence per dollar. This means you can do your most complex or ambitious work without worrying about hitting rate limits on a subscription or high API costs. I personally find Sol more attractive to use because it's more available. OpenAI isn't saying that it will disappear from my subscription after 2 weeks, which is what Anthropic does with Fable, so it feels worth investing in and building real workflows around. In terms of benchmarks, OpenAI published a lot of them in their launch blog posts, but I want to pick out a few ones that I thought were interesting. At launch, Sol ranked first on Design Arena's leaderboard. It beat models including Fable 5 and GLM2 on tasks like websites, UI components, data visualizations, and image-to-website tasks. Artificial analysis also placed Sol with max effort and Fable 5 in the same top tier. Sol looked really strong for coding agent price performance and presentation quality, while Fable leads the broader analytical quality benchmark. Another interesting benchmark is the agent's last exam, which focuses on economically valuable real-world tasks. Sol at extra high beat Opus while using fewer tokens. By the way, I'm going to be doing more 5.6 Sol deep dives and direct comparisons on the channel, so make sure you're subscribed if you want to see those. Now that we understand the models powering the new experience, let's take a look at 4 ChatGPT and Codex updates that I found most exciting. Let's start with ChatGPT Sites, which might be the easiest way to publish and share a website today. Sites takes you from conversation to live website all inside ChatGPT. You can use it to create and host websites, dashboards, internal tools, lightweight apps, and even games. The key benefit behind ChatGPT Sites is that it removes all the complexity from getting a site live on the internet. This matters because hosting, configuration, and infrastructure can be very tricky for beginners, and even if you have experience like me, it's sometimes just annoying to set up. ChatGPT Sites lets you build and publish a site really easily, and you can even build experiences with authentication, persistent database storage, and file storage. A site can start from a prompt, markdown files, documents, presentations, links, spreadsheet data, or information from plugins. All you need to do to use Sites is tag @sites in your prompt and describe what you want. Here's a site I made about GPT 5.6 and ChatGPT Work from a research report. Instead of a long and rather dry document, I now have an interactive explainer to share with my team or my friends. I think ChatGPT Sites is a better way to share interactive information with your team or clients than another dry spreadsheet, document, or deck. And for personal projects, I think it's good for things like landing pages or portfolios. You even have control over who can view your site. You can restrict it to your team or make it available to anyone on the internet. And you can even add a custom domain for more polish. One thing to note is that I personally wouldn't use ChatGPT Sites for production apps where I want to have external users or where I want more control over my infrastructure and deployment. But for getting an idea live and sharing it really quickly, ChatGPT Sites is really solid. Next up, let's look at subagents for parallel work. Subagents allow you to split work across multiple agents. A root agent can delegate independent work streams to specialized agents who work in parallel and then synthesize results. Subagents can be used both in Codex and ChatGPT Work tasks. So why are subagents so useful? First and foremost, they help you get work done faster by having multiple agents work on different parts of a task at the same time. Second, they help you produce better results by keeping noisy work of the main agent thread. You see, long tasks produce a lot of noise from things like exploration, test outputs, research, and partial results. This can bury the truly important requirements and decisions. Subagents move that work off the main thread so that the main agent, called the root agent, stays focused on the most important things, while specialized agents handle the separate parts of the process and the other tasks. They then return useful summaries back to the root agent. Remember that Ultra mode, the max effort setting, automatically uses subagents, but you don't need to use Ultra to use subagents. You can explicitly ask Codex or ChatGPT Work to delegate to subagents at other reasoning levels as well. To use subagents, just ask Codex to use subagents where it thinks they would be helpful. You can use the subagents pane to see what each agent is doing, click into the individual threads, and steer them if needed. Subagents are super helpful for splitting up work, but for an agent to be genuinely useful, it still needs to understand what's on your screen and be able to act on it. That brings us to Appshots, aka Enhanced Computer Use. Think of an Appshot as a smarter screenshot. It sends your app window to Codex, giving it visual context, all without the copy, pasting, or describing that would otherwise be involved. With computer use permission, Codex can use Appshots to inspect and interact with supported apps in the background. You can continue working somewhere else and monitor what's going on with picture-in-picture preview. This is super useful for working with Mac apps, especially iPhone simulators in Xcode, or desktop apps that don't have an MCP server or API that Codex can use directly. When using Appshots, a pro tip is to be explicit about what authorization you're granting. Use words such as advise, prepare a draft, or execute in your prompt so that Codex knows whether you want guidance, a reviewable draft, or an action. And keep high-impact actions gated by human approval. For example, payments, deletes, and external communication. This brings us to the fourth exciting new feature, a better in-app browser. You can now access a full-featured web browser inside the ChatGPT desktop app. For builders, this opens up a world of possibilities, from letting Codex use your app to verify that it works, to delegating work like research to Codex, where it can browse multiple web pages to achieve your goal. And thanks to the latest release, the in-app browser has a ton of new functionality. You can use a separate profile from your normal Chrome profile, meaning that it can have its own things like tabs and logins. Here's my site explaining ChatGPT Work and GPT 5.6. With the new browser, Codex can inspect the live result, not just the source code of the site, and verify that the interactions and layout work as expected. One of my favorite new features is annotations. Instead of describing the exact changes I want on the site, I can point to a specific part that I want to be changed, and Codex will get that context in order to make the change, and then will also verify the rendered result. This closes the verification loop between building and checking the actual result, which is one of the most important parts of working effectively with AI coding agents. That brings us to the end of the exciting Codex updates and to the end of this video. If you want to level up how you build with AI, check out Become an AI Native Builder with Codex and Claude Code. Make sure to use the link in the video description for a YouTube exclusive discount. If you learned something from this video, don't forget to like and subscribe. I hope you make some time to try the new ChatGPT app, the latest Codex features, and of course, the new GPT 5.6 models. Let me know what you think of these updates in the comments. I'd love to know which features you're most excited to try, and share any questions you have about the new ChatGPT app or GPT 5.6. I read every one of them. Catch you in the next one.